Hello, everybody. This is Jacob Sapochnik with the Enchanting Lawyer Podcast. And today we are going to be talking to a very special guest, Tim Stanley, the CEO of Justia. And him and his wife, Stacy, they were also the original founders of FindLaw. And before we talk to Tim, I mean, I had a few discussions the past few weeks with legal innovators like Kevin O'Keefe from Lex Blog and others, and I consider to be Tim in that category. We talked about building sustainable businesses. We talked about creating innovation in law with many of the attorneys that we engage here on the podcast and email us. And I want to go back to the industry and understand some core elements and where is the future of law. And Tim has a lot of insights on building content, websites, and of course the free law movement, what it is. So Tim, I'm honored and privileged to have you on the show. How are you today?
Doing great. I'm glad to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Excellent. And most of our listeners who are attorneys, they know that in the legal space right now, there's just few companies who know what it takes to build solid websites, and I consider Justia to be one of those companies. And a small disclaimer is that I am actually a customer of Justia. I've been working with Justia, I think, from late 2005, and I have to tell you that a lot of my success I owe to Tim and Stacy, and their support over the years. And I wanted to share some of that with our listeners. Hopefully, we'll be inspired and we'll take some takeaways. So Tim, welcome to the show.
All right, thanks.
So Tim, why don't you tell us a little bit? I mean, I gave you a little bit of intro. You're CEO of Justia, and I mentioned about FindLaw. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? You are an attorney. Stacy's an attorney. A bit about the journey of you transitioning from an attorney to a legal technology innovator.
Sure. Well, I mean, I was a math and computer science major as an undergraduate. Then did a master's degree in engineering at Stanford. Went off to law school, and then came back. Was actually in a PhD program at Stanford, and that was sort of at the beginning of sort of the internet's time. So this is 92, 93 when I was back there, and there was just I would say things were just sort of starting to happen on the web. So the web had just come out. Gopher was probably still had more information than the web did, and then as things were sort of moving along, myself, Stacy, and Martin Rajeisen were putting up different free legal information and doing different engineering projects. And we started, started FindLaw. Initially, we had taken the idea and had wanted to do something at Stanford, ideally with the law school, but at that time they weren't that interested in doing the free law stuff. So we just started putting it up, and Martin and I were two pretty good programmers, and basically we'd get ideas and we'd program, we'd put things up and get another idea, and we'd go to conferences, and we just we'd program it and put it live onto our website, and things just sort of took off from there. By no means were we really thinking of it as a business necessarily, or if it was a business, we were really thinking CLE was actually going to be our business at the time, which did not turn out to be the core of it. But we were able to do things very quickly and very fast in terms of the programming side. And it was, things were getting more and more scalable, and that was sort of the initial driving force for us. And we put up a lot of free law. We put up, we had free websites at the time. We had a free directory. We had a lot of free stuff up. And our business model at the time was really getting advertisements from West and Lexus, who were sort of competing against each other. And so I was very thankful that they helped fund all the free law stuff we were doing at the time. It was great, at least while it lasted.
And I remember that when I was in law school, late 90s. FindLaw was one of my main sources to get articles, get free case law. It was just one of those beautiful resources, and I didn't have to pay for it. And this is just. Take me back to the time where how did you come up with, or maybe before we go there, why don't you explain to our listeners what is actually free law? What is the free law movement, and how did you get involved with it after you started testing all these things with your colleagues?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of folks that have sort of involved with the free law movement. It's really sort of trying to get the primary law online for free. So that's, the codes, the regulations, and the case law. When it first started out, it was really being driven by Cornell. So Peter Martin, who was the Dana Cornell Law School, and Tom Bruce, who was the other sort of co-founder of the Legal Information Institute at Cornell. And they did a lot of work on the U.S. Code, on the regs, and grabbing some of the federal appellate decisions and the New York Court of Appeals decisions they were putting online. FindLaw came a little after that. Mark conference up in Burlingame up here in the Bay Area, and there was a guy named Jamie Love who was presenting or sort of doing a debate with a former congressman who was sort of representing West, and it was very much on the copyrightability of law and should it be copyrightable or not in terms of the citations and things, and there was just sort of a debate, and I think that Martin and myself and certainly Stacy, we sort of came on the free side of it. That should be open and free. I mean, if you're supposed to know the law, it should be there for everybody. And that was probably the first thing that sort of got us going on the free law side in terms of our own projects. Was this Jamie Love the discussion that he had? I'd say the other person who probably did a lot for the free law movement, much more, and he probably should get a lot more credit than he often gets, is Alan Sugarman, who litigated with West, and actually, won a court case that was upheld in the Second Circuit and wasn't taken up by the Supreme Court, but where basically the internal page numbers were not copyrightable, nor the small sort of corrections to the case. That those were not copyrightable either by West, and West and him had been in litigation about that. So really, Alan sort of opened it up for everybody on the legal standpoint. And then since then, there's just been a bunch of folks sort of aggregating the case law and sort of sending it out, case law and codes and everything else, and sort of sending it out to folks so they can download it in batch. What we do right now is that we're aggregating all the cases every day. We're also grabbing codes and regulations, and then we put this information up on publicresource.org, which is run by Carl Malamud, and it also gets distributed out to the Internet Archive and a few other places so that people can download it for free. The other place, if folks are interested, is there's a free law website run by Brian Carver and Mike Listner over at Berkeley. And they've put up a lot of batches and APIs for people to get some of the archive decisions and newer decisions as well. So those are great places for people to get it. But at its very core, the idea is that we pay taxes and everything, and you have the laws that come out, and the laws really should be available for everyone to see at no cost. And that's sort of still the driving factor. I think we still have a long ways to go. But that's really it. It should be available to everyone for free. You should not have to pay West or Lexis or whoever else, Wolters Kluwer or whoever else is sort of charging money for access. We should get on there online for free and then sort of share it out.
Absolutely.
And it's been fun.
So Tim, give us examples, maybe some of the main major victories or wins for free case law in the past few years, just so people can understand some of the power here that we have.
Well, I think that the biggest thing that's happened, so the Alan Sugarman one, that's probably the biggest litigation win. That was back in the 90s. But the biggest thing is there's been some databases that have come available, which have really been quite good in terms of the archive. One database was provided by Fastcase to publicresource.org, which had the federal appellate decisions back to 1F second, so back to like the 1920s. So all those decisions are online, as well as all the Supreme Court cases, which was very nice. There's also a couple other databases that Brian Carver and Michael Listner have. I think one came from Lawbox. I'm not sure where the other one came from. But those have also been sort of large databases of decisions that have been quite well received. And those include state case law. I think the state case law goes back to like 1950 or something like that. So that's also been good from the free law side. In terms of the usability of it, probably the best free law site for case law that's out there is Google Scholar.
Mm-hmm.
So Google Scholar is really good. They've built a lot of functionality into it. And normally if someone asks me where they should look for doing research on free case law, that's where I would say try out Google Scholar. Justia has an archive of all the cases and everything else, so we have it all online, which is pretty good from a sort of fetching standpoint. And we also write case summaries of all the federal, daily case summaries of all the federal appellate decisions and all the top level, top state level courts. So the California Supreme Court, New York Court of Appeals, or the civil and criminal courts in Texas. And then for California, we actually write same day case opinions of all the California appellate courts and send those out. Mm-hmm. And then we incorporate those into our case law, as well as send them out to places like Fastcase so they can use them as well. So that part's been pretty good. And then there's a bunch of startups that have started creating new databases and communities around case law, including Ravelock and Casetext, and Judicata's been doing some stuff on employment law, and there's been a few others like that. Think Computer has a site called plainsight.org, has also been doing some stuff there with the free law movement. So it's really you're seeing a lot more stuff being built out of these documents once they became available, and it just sort of shows that you can do a lot of stuff if you don't have to spend all your time trying to just get the raw materials. Once this sort of comes out in bulk, people can really start using it, playing with it, and we can sort of see what works best for end users in terms of doing legal research.
Right. And those, companies like freelawproject.org, they were trying to do the same kind of
those are the guys in Berkeley. That's Berkeley, Brian Carver and Mike Listner, and they've really you have large archives you can download in bulk, as well as APIs to get new cases and things like that. So we've done work with them, as well as helped them with financial support, things like that.
So I'm curious, Tim, how does it work in practice? For example, for official court opinions. So where do those come from?
So right now it depends. Some courts will put them up on their website. So they've moved to like a public domain citation system. And you can actually get the final opinion on the website. That would be true for like Illinois and some other states like that. Other states, the official publisher will be West or Lexis. And the only way you're really going to be able to get that would be if you were, to either triple key in it from a book, or you can't really get it from electronically because there's licensing terms that you can't actually use their stuff to actually get a copy of the case. But the courts don't actually give the final decision. So it really tends to be getting things either doubled or triple keyed in overseas, where you tend to see those things getting coming here either by way of the Philippines or China, where they're actually doing the typing of the cases, which is really sort of a waste. If you dug into it a bit, if you think about an appellate case, the real work on it, really a lot of that takes place by the lawyers, right? You have to have litigation, you have the district court case, you're suing each other, or the trial court case, you're having a litigation there, and then it goes up, up to the appellate level, right? And still have the litigants fighting, and you're filing more briefs, and then the judge writes the decision, right? It goes through that, you have a bench opinion, maybe a slip opinion, and then you would think that the final published opinion should just also be put up by the court in some sort of organized way, but that's often not the case. Instead, it goes off to West. They do a spell check. They'll do spell check, maybe a little grammar checking. They'll put the parallel citations into other West West decisions for sure, and then they send it back to the judge. He makes that the official opinion, and then it's sitting on Westlaw in the West books. But you don't have access to that from the court site, so you're not going to find that. You're not going to be able to go to the court site. What they're going to have is the latest slip opinion, but they're not going to have the final opinion. So that's a real problem still that's in place, and that's in place for most of the courts still, including the federal appellate courts. You can't even get like a Ninth Circuit final opinion on their website. You can get just the slip opinion. So that's something I think that still needs to be worked through a bit. But that's sort of where we're at. Other states again have put up the final opinions. Oklahoma, Illinois. There's a lot of states that have started moving to that, and they're also using public domain citations. But I think that in an ideal world, more courts would do it. And what from the court standpoint, if I was the judge, I think the judges should think of it this way. It's not just trying to solve a decision between two litigants. They should also think about what's best for the overall legal system. And what's best for the overall legal system is that everybody has access to these final court opinions. And so they should do something by making them freely available to everybody. It'll actually increase the overall practice of law, and it'll make everyone better off. But so far that has not happened in many courts.
And it seems to me there's just no a uniform way to do stuff. It's all kind of like we do it this way, and this states that they do it this way. It's not. It's kind of there's no procedure as to how it should be done as of now.
Yeah, it's very it's everybody sort of does their own thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a few states that are using common software for it.
Yeah,
but it's really sort of a bunch of little fiefdoms in different courts, even within like California. If you look at through the California courts, Orange County system's different than Los Angeles counties, different than San Diego counties. So it's there hasn't been any sort of really good standardization, and part of that is the decision process of courts. They're not focused on necessarily trying to work with the other courts outside their jurisdiction. They're just focused on their own sort of little area. And so there's nothing that's really been standardized to sort of make this both cheaper and better. I think it could happen, but it hasn't happened so far.
So, Tim, before we start talking about Justia and things that are connected with building websites and things like that, what do you think is the bottom line for free law, and what would you like to see happen in the next few years?
I think probably a few things. One, I mean, I'd like to see some sort of standardization on the sort of the publishing systems, especially for codes and regulations. I mean, if you really sort of dig into it, for most people, codes and regulations are much more important than case law. Yeah. I mean, that's for everyday people. You have things like that. So that's one item I'd like to sort of see. And with cases, I'd really like to see people move towards a public domain citation system and have the courts make that officially approved. Part of that is working it into standards like the Blue Book and then getting that accepted. And once it sort of comes in by way of the Blue Book, then it starts getting picked up everywhere. So that'd be one thing that's helpful. So if the Blue Book and the courts can sort of work on that. The other thing that I think that's big on the free law side is right now you have a lot of regulations that are owned by private industry that get incorporated by reference. So if you had some sort of like certain types of safety regulations, let's say you're trying to do like refrigerator repair or something like that, you'll read through the code of the Code of Federal Regulations, and it'll cite off to a private industry standard and say you need to do this in order to sort of follow the law. The issue is a lot of these private regulations are owned and are copyrighted by private organizations, sort of membership organizations, and they want to charge you $1,000 to read it, or you don't really get free access to it. Yeah. And so if you're responsible for it, sometimes there's even some real penalties involved if you don't follow those regulations. Those should also be open, and that's a huge separate world. This regulation stuff outside of case law, outside of codes, where you have so many sort of different industry groups having set regulations that have been incorporated as part of the federal regulations, or even on the state side, state regulations, that people just don't have access to at all, and that really impacts a lot of people on their everyday life in terms of their work.
And somebody probably should lead the effort to coordinate all this. It cannot be just maybe some nonprofit or.
Yeah, well, publicresource.org, and I'm on the board of trustees there, and also right now the general counsel. We've been involved with litigation with a number of these folks, both here in the United States and overseas, and we'll sort of see where that goes. But it's really what we've tried to do is grab the stuff that we feel, especially some of the health and safety stuff, regulations related to health and safety. We've sort of tested the waters to see what would happen there, and put some stuff up, and then we get sued. And at some point, that should be a larger case. And we'd really like to sort of get a final judicial opinion on that as to whether a regulation that's sort of been imposed into law, more or less, can be copyrighted and have forced charges, or is that something that should be open? Especially when a lot of these private industry groups went to Congress or went to the different agencies and got them to incorporate the regulations. It's not like most of these agencies just sort of find these regulations by chance. In the private industry groups really try to get their sort of their standards incorporated into the regulations, because in a way it helps the private industry groups.
Right.
It's really what
and I think it's going to be interesting to see what develops in this space in the next few years, especially as more and more of these resources are going to become available.
Yeah.
So exciting.
Yeah.
So Tim, why don't you take me back? Before you start, you sold FindLaw, and why Justia and why this space?
Well, I mean, yeah. So FindLaw got purchased by West in 2001. And that was sort of after, in a way, the whole .com world sort of ended, I guess, in 2000, might be a good way to put it. And while we had done quite well when it was very few of us, we were actually quite profitable, we raised quite a bit of money, and at a certain point in time, we hired a lot of people. At a certain point in time, we didn't, it just wasn't going. But, we had an okay outcome, at least from a monetary standpoint, by selling to West. My relationship with Wes when I left wasn't that great, and so I started Justia shortly after. I think I waited a day, maybe 2 days, and then I got sued for a non-compete, and I got shut down for a little while. But so it took us a little while before we really started going, which is really, sort of the very end of 2004, beginning of 2005. I think that we did things slightly different with Justia. Is that we've got probably 100 plus people working with us directly or down, or as contractors in different ways. But we've really sort of just grown it out of the revenues. And as we do more stuff, we put up more free stuff. So it's really, we've done it slightly different than FindLaw, where we went out. But I think that gives us a bit more control of what we're doing, which is nice. And allows us to do things which don't necessarily make economic sense, like share out, all the stuff, all the work we do in bulk. I mean, that's something that a lot of people, if you were a pure business, you wouldn't be able, it wouldn't quite make sense, and your investors might go, "What the hell are you doing?" So, but that part's been okay. The main thing I think for us on the sort of the website side is that we got, our engineers are really good, and a lot of this is very mathematical in nature. I mean, granted, search engine optimization to a large extent has become more content focused, I'd say, than even technically focused. But I think what we've done is we've by sort of having the ability and the different types of tools, we can quickly look through sites, see what's good and what's not good. We're able to make things go well. So if people do write content, they'll do extremely well if they can get good content up. And then we have a separate platform now, which is sort of tied into our directory, where people can also participate and get additional exposure through participation, whether it's just getting a full profile, which is totally free. I mean, we don't have any extra. You get a full profile at no cost on our site. We got the QA stuff. We have annotation parts worked in. You can also tie it into things like Cornell's WEX. So you could you want to write on the Wikipedia page at the Legal Information Institute or at Cornell. We can tie into that as well. So there's a lot of different sort of participation that we're using. With the platform we've developed, which I think has been, pretty helpful to the people who have chosen to participate. I mean, the rewards are actually quite great, and that's been, sort of an additional thing that's nice. But it's at every single step. If you look at it, whether it's the lawyer's website or their blog, or even some of the social media accounts and things they set up, the real sort of key thing is that those that participate and provide good content and provide things of value, they get rewarded. They will do better. They'll do better in our directory. They should do better in Google. They should get more clients, and they should be rewarded with clients. And that's really, I think, really the sort of the big change. If you were to look at things 20 years ago, there was really, it was hard for people to figure out who's good and who's not good in terms of the type of attorney they are. Right. But now that it's much more focused on participation and what I would sort of call quality participation, not just participation, not just a numbers game. That's really been sort of the driving factor in terms of who does better on the terms of doing client development. And it's something, I mean, I've looked through thousands of clients. We have a few thousand clients, probably more than a few thousand clients right now that we have on our site, and or we've built sites for. And it's not hard to figure out who's doing great and who's not. It's really by how focused are they on sort of providing information to the public and what's the quality of it. It's really relatively simple.
Mm-hmm. And Tim, it's interesting that you mentioned that because when I take my personal example, when I decided to work with you, I think it was late 2005, and you were just 2 years into the launch of Justia, right?
And really, probably at that point, just within a year of doing website business, right? Because we were shut down for a year. So.
Oh yeah, that's true. And I was kind of, and I think a lot of attorneys who listen to the show can relate. I was looking for. I mean, I changed maybe I would say 7 website providers within a span of 18 months. And in my mind it was always about you pay us and we'll build something and then we'll see what happens. And I think when I spoke to Stacy, I think that was kind of just like what you said. The premise is that here's what we do. We provide the platform, and then it's all about building content that will serve your clients, and from there things will happen. And I think that was the first time that I realized that if I do that, then it's not SEO doesn't matter anymore. It's what is the information you give out, and what's going to happen when people read that. How are they going to be rewarding you? And in our case, of course, it was a beautiful progress over the years. Getting our site visible and getting the clients to like our content. So how do you think websites have changed over the years since you started and now?
Well, I mean, I think the core thing is still providing good content. I mean, the biggest stuff with websites probably in the last decade or so is everything moved to CSS, and now it's responsive design, and it's mobile devices. I mean, I think that most law firm websites right now probably have at least 30 to 40% of their traffic coming from either phones or tablets, with probably about 30% from the phones and maybe another 10% from tablets, depending on sort of the practice area. Some are more, some are less. So that's been a big change. And certainly if you look at something like the phone interface, that's a lot smaller than the core desktop website. And so, if you look at the way we sort of approach it, or certainly the way we set it up for folks, is you have to figure out what leads to conversions, what gets clients to contact you, and that's a very different sort of design on a phone versus a desktop, and then you have to work it all in together. So, as a website changes in size, or the attributes, the browser size changes, that you're presenting the correct thing to the client, or to the lawyer's potential client. But it's really sort of the conversion side. So that I think that's been the biggest thing. As far as changes beyond that, I think in particular, Google is still the primary place that people get their traffic from. Nothing's close to it. I mean, Bing, even when it started serving Yahoo, never really has taken off for that much traffic, because Google does such a good job also of indexing all the internal pages and getting them to rank. And Google's algorithm has really gotten much, much better in terms of the quality of content. And really, you need to have original content. You need to have it, it has to be, certainly more words than in the past, I guess is one way to look at it. It should be, very legally focused. It can't just be sort of this Mad Libs sort of gibberish that some folks have written, or some people still write. It doesn't rank anymore. So that's been a big change. So really pushing on the content has been one of our big sort of focuses. And then, separately from that, social media has had some impact on traffic, although that's not quite what you had expected it to be. I think there's certainly some areas, say you're doing like Social Security disability or something like that, where like Facebook works out really well. But for the majority of folks, social media hasn't been sort of a huge traffic driver. It's been more how do you pick out select vertical markets.
Mm-hmm.
So while LinkedIn might work very well for business lawyers, there's ways to sort of do things on the consumer side on Facebook. Twitter is a great way to reach out to the media or just different sort of news folks or different sort of other social media people. If you want to, you can use Twitter for that. And Google Plus, that sort of changes as to what it is. It seems like every week.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. So it certainly ties into the Google Local, which people care about a lot because the maps is a big thing for people. Especially law firms really focus on sort of getting local business. Family law, estate planning, and anyone who wants to hit their local market. So that's really why I think Google Plus still is sort of aimed at, although it's sort of slightly different than the Google Places or whatever the name is for the product this week.
What it used to be.
Changed it quite a bit. Yeah.
So Tim, if a new attorney or somebody wants to get into take their website to the next level, what would you tell them based on the analytics and the research and everything that you guys gather in just the everyday? What would be like maybe 3 or 5 tips that you would suggest somebody to take their site to the next level?
Yeah. So I mean, the first thing I would say is if someone's really starting out brand new and they don't know exactly what to do, and you have time because you don't have clients yet. The most important thing is the content that you write. Mm-hmm. And if you really sort of dig into it, you really have to write, very good about us page, very good attorney profiles, and very good practice area pages. And you really want to break down your practice area pages to every single type of case you want. So if you're an injury lawyer, you might write about, might have a personal injury page, but you need one on car accidents. You might need one on texting while driving. You might need one on, teen driving accidents. You need to sort of break it down a bit. Immigration, you might write one on each of the types of visas that you want to get clients on. If you want to do K1, K3 visas, or you're doing H1Bs, what are the different sort of verticals within your vertical that you're sort of focused on? And then you need to write good original content. Don't just copy some government documents. Don't make it, just really superficial stuff that doesn't add a lot. But try to, to a certain extent, I'd really try to add a little bit of legalese into it. Make it something that's going to be different than everyone else's. Because if it's the same, you aren't going to do that great. So that's the biggest thing is the content. Beyond that, you'd like to have a responsive website, so you like it so it works across different platforms. And then you like to sort of get your website out there. You need to have it submitted out to a number of the different directories, whether it's certain of the back-end providers. For Yellow Pages, you certainly want to get it into our directory. You want to get into Avo. Yeah. If you can get free listings on some of the other commercial directories, those are the ones to look for. You don't want to do paid directories, but there's a number of directories and other what I call sort of social platforms for law right now, where you can at least get a profile and something set up, or you can set up on some of the generic. I say generic, that's right. That's probably not the right word, but some of the just normal places to get like social profiles, whether certainly like LinkedIn and places like that, but also like About.me. There's a bunch of ones like that you could also set up profiles on that can help you. So that can sort of go, and then I would recommend participating online in different ways, whether that's answering questions like on Avo or on our site, maybe doing some annotations, things that get you seen and sort of mentioned, so you can sort of drive your online presences in different ways. And participation is a big win on that side. As far as what you'd have to do really to pay for stuff, I mean, you can get, we offer free websites at justdo.net. So people want free ones. You can get a free blog at Blogger. Mm-hmm. You get free profiles on our site in Avo at least. That's not a bad place to start. And then if things go, you want more flexibility or some more branding and things, then you can always upgrade and hire somebody. But that's sort of one step at a time. I mean, as much as everybody knows about it, including us and everyone else, the biggest thing here is getting good content. If you don't have good content and you don't write original content, it doesn't matter who you're working with. Mm-hmm. It's not going to work. If you have good content, or you hire us to write content, or other lawyers to write content, you can do quite well, and the web can really, really work for you.
Absolutely, and I think this is key. Good content, consistent content, and providing value is what Google is looking for right now. There's no more gaming the system, keywords, and all that kind of backlinks. It's all about content right now, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's much. The whole world is much in terms of what you need in terms of links and everything else. It's not really. It's not really what it was. It's not. Yeah, it's not this sort of big these link schemes like it was even 5 years ago.
Right.
It is. I mean, Google's focus on content and being associated with websites like our directory or some of the others like Avo is really of high importance, because once Google realizes you're really a lawyer and you're sort of associated in this way, they will start ranking you.
Yeah.
It's a lot better than having a bunch of links on these crappy directories. I mean, that there's like 5,000 links for some of these places that you submit out to for $50 or something. They'll submit you to 5,000 places.
Like a travel agency or
those don't help you anymore. I mean, those days are done. But you certainly want to be associated with sort of the the larger legal portals that are out there. And because those can be quite helpful to you, and all the major ones should have some sort of free profile that you can at least get a free profile on.
Right. Excellent. Thank you so much, Tim. This is great information, and we can talk for hours about all these things and more. But I think that was a great snippet, and I encourage people to check justia.com. Any other legal portals you would like to share with us that our audience can find you and what Justia is doing right now?
I mean, well, Justia is our core one. We've also done work with Cornell. We beforehand, I used to be on the board at Nolo, and they're now part of Internet Brands, which also, I guess, is also running lawyers.com now. They got that from Lexis. So those are other ones to check out.
So if you if you email them to me, Tim, I will make sure to link them in our show notes. So in addition to Justia website or any other links that you want to share with our listeners, we'll put them in the show notes.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
And I'll send them on over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tim, and have a beautiful day. And my regards to Stacy as well.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jacob.
And thank you to our listeners for tuning in every week. If you have any questions, you can email me at jacob@enchantinglawyer.com, and we'll see you at our next episode.